The Metagrow Smart 8 Plus is an upgraded version of the very popular Smart 8. The Smart 8 is a sleek, foldable LED bar fixture listed at 760 watts. It has a digital display, bloom button, and an onboard timer. The Smart 8 Plus features the industry-leading Samsung LM301h diodes.
Hello growers, I'm Dr. MJ Coco from CocoForCannabis.com. I tested the original Smart 8 last year and was impressed. Like all Metagrow fixtures, the original Smart 8 performed very well and it's an incredible value. The new Smart 8 Plus is somewhat more expensive and I'm curious if the performance improved enough to justify that added cost. I run the new Metagrow Smart 8 Plus through the same 9 tests that I ran with the original Smart 8.
I test it in a 5x5 area, with and without the bloom button, and I test it in a 4x4 area for growers with and without supplemental carbon dioxide. I'll do side-by-side comparisons with the original and plus versions of the Smart 8 in all 9 tests. The main difference between the two versions is the diodes. The original Smart 8 uses SANAN full-spectrum diodes, and the new Smart 8 Plus uses the popular Samsung LM301h diodes.
We'll see if and how using the Samsung LM301h diodes makes a difference, and whether that difference is worth the added cost. This comparison is obviously relevant if you're buying the Smart 8, but these are relevant questions for a lot of other grow lights too. If you want to buy either version of the Smart 8, visit metagrow.com and use 10% discount code CCFC. But one lucky grower will win the one that I tested for free. If you're watching during the live premiere on YouTube, guess the 3-digit number in the live chat. If you missed the premiere, be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.
The Metagrow Smart 8 Plus is the foldable LED bar array, so it arrives in a pretty big box. I'll remove the straps, corner protectors, and the box. Let's see, we have some Metagrow stickers, and then a slightly crushed accessories box. I don't think there's anything particularly fragile in here. There's a manual, and then a power cord. It has a 220-volt plug, but I'm sure there's an adapter in here. We have an RJ cable that you can use to daisy chain fixtures, a couple of hanging kits, and indeed, we have a plug adapter. This will make the plug into something a little more familiar to home growers. I'll finish unpacking the fixture. This Smart 8 Plus is just like the original Smart 8. They look exactly the same, and it's a good-looking fixture. I'll show you how it unfolds, and then we'll take a closer look. The drivers are housed in the central chassis, so it's really fully assembled and easy to set up. There are the stickers again, the manual, RJ cable, hanging kits, power cord, and plug adapter. The difference between this Smart 8 Plus and the original Smart 8 is the diodes. Smart 8 Plus here uses the industry-leading Samsung LM301h diodes. You can see them arranged in rows of 3 along each bar. We'll see if they warrant the hype and the price when I run the tests. Let me get it hanging. I saw that it comes with a couple wire hanging kits, but I prefer to use 4 ratchet pulleys for my tests. The Smart 8 is perfectly stable hanging it from the hooks on the 4 corners. I'll plug it in, and then turn the dimming knob to 100%, and we have light. One of the cool things about the Smart 8 is this digital display. It shows the estimated power in watts, the dimmer setting, the spectrum, an estimate of the ppf, and the amps. The bloom button is between the 2 knobs. When activated, the screen shows the spectrum is now F1, and the estimated power and ppf also went up. When the bloom button is turned off, the 660nm diodes are dimmed to about 60% of their normal power. When the bloom button is on, the 660nm diodes are driven at 100% of their normal power. The idea is that growers may want to reduce the amount of red light during the vegetative stage. I'll discuss this more when I test it. The dimmer knob offers preset options at 80%, 60%, and 40%. You also have the option of connecting it to an external controller if you want to have more granular control of the dimming. Finally, the knob on the left controls the timer. When I turn it to 12H, you can see the fixture reset. I just activated a 12-12 timing sequence, and you can see the built-in timer counting down. There are also options for 16-8, 18-6, 24, and 22-2. The built-in timer also initiates a sunrise sequence, so the light will turn on gradually. When I tested the original Smart 8, the timer did not have memory, which could cause problems if you lost power. But I shared feedback with Metagrow, and they upgraded the timers on all the fixtures that use them. They now include memory and will continue their cycle when the power is restored. Okay, let's check out the diodes. As I may have mentioned, the Smart 8 Plus features the Samsung LM301h diodes. There are 2,880 of them, with a color temperature of 4000 K. There are also 80 OSRAM 660 nanometer diodes. You can see their red glow between the sets of full spectrum diodes. The diode numbers are the same as the original Smart 8. It features 2,880 SAN diodes. I'm happy they did not change the diode count. On the one hand, it's a good number, about 3.9 diodes per watt, or 0.26 watts per diode. On the other hand, it allows us to directly compare the Samsung and SAN diodes. But before I can run the tests, we need to let the diodes warm up and stabilize. Let's check out the published stats. On Metagrow.com, you can find both versions of the Smart 8. Let's look at the original Smart 8 first. You can see it's listed for $629. Code CCFC gets you 10% off on all Metagrow equipment, so your cost will be only about $566. And they offer free shipping with FedEx in the continental US. Let's check the new Smart 8 Plus. With the Samsung LM301h diodes, it's listed at $779. With discount code CCFC, it'll only be about $701. But that is $135 more than the original Smart 8. Both fixtures are listed at 760 watts. For the Smart 8 Plus, they claim a ppf of 2,204 micromoles and an efficacy of 2.9 micromoles per joule. Before I run the tests, let's run these numbers to the Coco for Cannabis Grow Light calculator. This is our tool to help growers evaluate and compare grow lights. It focuses on the important metrics and makes adjustments which allow you to compare different types of data. In the calculator on the right, I load all the fixtures that I test. I'll pull up the data from the original Smart 8 that I tested last year. It pulled 750 watts and put out 1,744 micromoles of usable light. That's a usable photon efficacy of 2.33 micromoles per watt, and it's enough light to cover almost 27 square feet. If you use discount code CCFC on Metagrow.com, your price will be about $566, which comes to only 32 cents per micromole. That's still a phenomenal price. In the calculator on the left, we can enter data from manufacturers or other sources. The new Smart 8 Plus has a listed power draw of 760 watts. If you use discount code CCFC on Metagrow.com, the price will be about $701. The calculated ppf with the Samsung LM301h diodes would be higher, so I assume that Metagrow is listing total ppf. They list 2,204 micromoles. That would give the Smart 8 Plus a better performance than the original, but I have to actually run the tests to say for sure. I'm going to run the same set of tests with this Smart 8 Plus that I ran with the original Smart 8. I started with my official tests in a 5x5 area. For my official tests, I always set the hanging height so that the maximum ppfd in the PAR range is exactly 1,000 micromoles per square meter. With the original Smart 8, that height was 58 centimeters, 23 inches above the sensor. The new Smart 8 Plus is a little more powerful, and it requires a higher hanging height, 64.5 centimeters, 25.5 inches. I ran the official PAR test, then I ran the official ePAR test. ePAR is extended PAR. Whereas PAR is 400 to 700 nanometer light, ePAR is 400 to 750 nanometer light. The difference is that ePAR includes far red, and PAR does not. Recent research has shown that far red light is photosynthetic. So for the best measure of grow light efficacy, we now use ePAR. As with the original Smart 8, I ran these tests with the bloom button on, and then I ran them again with the bloom button off. There's a lot of data here for us to consider. Let's check out the maps. This is a very solid 5x5 PAR map. The maximum ppfd is 1,000 micromoles per square meter, and there's a broad region above 900. The lowest ppfds are in the corners, and they're all well above the 500 micromole threshold for efficient growth. The lowest value is 555 micromoles per square meter. Let's look back at the official PAR test with the original Smart 8. This map looks pretty similar. The same region is above 900 micromoles per square meter, and the corners are all in the 500s. They are a little lower. The lowest ppfd in this test was 508 micromoles per square meter. So it looks like the map from the new Smart 8 Plus is a little better, but it's close. We'll see how close when I run the numbers. First, let's look at the ePAR map from the new Smart 8 Plus. Switching to ePAR, the values go up more obviously. ePAR maps always have higher densities because they measure a broader range of light. There are now values above 1000 in the center of the map, and the corners are all close to 600 micromoles per square meter. Let's compare this to the official ePAR map from the original Smart 8. Again, the change is subtle, but if you paid close attention, you could see that this map has slightly lower values. There's a smaller area above 1000 micromoles per square meter, and the corners are lower. The ePAR map from the new Smart 8 Plus is better, but we can't really see how much better until I run the numbers on the PAR and ePAR tests with the new Smart 8 Plus. The hanging height for these tests was 64.5 centimeters, which is about 25.5 inches above the sensors. I had to hang the Smart 8 Plus that high in order to get the maximum ppfd down to 1000 micromoles per square meter. In the PAR test, I measured an average ppfd of 769.4, which is great. In the 5x5 test, that converts to a usable ppf of 1731.2 micromoles. In the ePAR range, the maximum density is 1035, and the average density is 803.1 micromoles per square meter. That's a usable ePPF of 1807 micromoles. The power draw for these tests was 777 watts. So the new Smart 8 Plus delivered 2.23 micromoles per watt in the PAR range and 2.33 micromoles per watt in the ePAR range. That's almost identical to the photon efficacy I measured with the original Smart 8. Let's analyze the Sanan versus Samsung LM301h comparison. I'll look at each set of tests side by side. First, I'll compare the official PAR tests. We have the original Smart 8 with the Sanan diodes on the left, and the new Smart 8 Plus with the Samsung LM301h diodes on the right. We discussed that the Smart 8 Plus seems to have a slightly better map, and that's borne out in the data. The Plus has a higher average ppfd and a higher usable ppf, but the efficacies are almost identical. It should be noted that since the Smart 8 Plus puts out more light, it also had to be hung higher. The higher height helps distribution into the corners, but it hurts the usable efficacy. Switching to the ePAR tests, we'll see the same pattern. Smart 8 Plus on the right is a better map, higher average density, and more usable ppf, but that seems to be largely because it has a somewhat higher power draw. The new Smart 8 Plus pulled 777 watts in my tests, whereas the original Smart 8 pulled 750 watts. But according to these test results, both fixtures converted power into micromoles of usable light at the same rate. There are a lot of factors that affect the efficacy of grow lights. As I've said before, the brand of diode is not generally the most important thing. How hard the diodes are driven can really affect efficacy. So you could say that the LM301H diodes are doing better because they maintain the same usable efficacy at a higher power draw and a higher hanging height. But the difference here is probably smaller than the buzz about these diodes would lead you to believe. I ran these official PAR and ePAR tests with the Metacro Smart 8 Plus, the bloom button on. Remember, when the bloom button is on, the 660 nanometer diodes are powered at their full normal current. Then I repeated the tests with the bloom button off. When the bloom button is off, the 660 nanometer diodes are dimmed to about 60% their normal power draw. As a result, the power draw for the fixture drops, but so does the photon density and the usable ppf. Red light contributes to cell elongation during vegetative growth, so some growers may want to reduce the amount of red light during veg. This is actually the reason we used to veg with metal halide bulbs and flower with HPS. The HPS is too much red light. Plants vegged under HPS become lanky. But even at full power, the 660 nanometer diodes on the Smart 8 and other LED grow lights don't usually pose the same problem. Red is a lower proportion of the overall flux than it is with HPS. The Smart 8 lets you dim the 660 nanometer diodes during veg. You can choose to leave the bloom button on for the full cycle. Okay, it's time to run some 4x4 tests. Like the original Smart 8, there are two ways that you can run the Smart 8 Plus in a 4x4 space. You can use elevated levels of carbon dioxide to allow plants to process the ultra high density light, or you can dim the fixture and run it at 80 or 60%. Plants in sealed rooms with carbon dioxide elevated to 1200 to 1500 parts per million can safely process up to a maximum of 1500 micromoles per square meter of PAR light. With the original Smart 8, I lowered it to 30.5 centimeters, 12 inches, and got very close to 1500 micromoles per square meter. With the new Smart 8 Plus, I was over 1500 micromoles per square meter at 12 inches. I raised it up to 35 centimeters, 14 inches, and hit the 1500 micromole per square meter target exactly. I ran a PAR test and an ePAR test. Let's check out the CO2 PAR map first. This is an excellent CO2 PAR map. It's perfect density light for growers with elevated carbon dioxide, and it's well distributed. The left and right edges are in the 900s. The rest of the map is well above 1100 micromoles per square meter. Again, this is similar to, but better than, the CO2 PAR map that I made with the original Smart 8. Here, the values in most squares are lower, especially along the right side where the values are in the mid 800s. But there are some squares on the left that are higher in this test. The original Smart 8 did very well in this test, and we have to look closely to see the improvement when I switch back to the map from the new Smart 8 Plus. So the PAR map is slightly better, but it's close. We can see the improvement a little easier in the ePAR maps. In the ePAR range, the new Smart 8 Plus delivers densities over 1000 micromoles per square meter everywhere, except for the lower left corner at 988. When I ran this test with the original Smart 8, you can see that both edges were still mostly below 1000 micromoles per square meter density. To a large extent, this is because the original Smart 8 was hung a little lower, and there was not a lot of room for light to spread out to the corners. With the new Smart 8 Plus, I raised the fixture to 14 inches, and it still hit 1500 micromoles per square meter in the center. The higher hanging height improves the distribution into the corners, but there isn't that much more light overall. Let's run the numbers on these CO2 tests with the Smart 8 Plus. As I'm discussing, the hanging height in these tests was 35 centimeters, about 14 inches. In the PAR range, the Smart 8 Plus hit a maximum ppfd of exactly 1,500 micromoles per square meter, and the average density was 1,244.4 micromoles per square meter. In a 4x4 test, that's a usable ppf of 1,791.9 micromoles. In the ePAR range, the Smart 8 Plus hit a maximum density of 1,561 and an average density of 1,305.8 micromoles per square meter. That's a usable ePPF of 1,880.4 micromoles. The power draw during these tests ticked down to 776 watts, so the PAR photon efficacy is 2.31 and the ePAR photon efficacy is 2.42 micromoles per watt. Again, this is really close to the results that I got with the original Smart 8. Let's compare the CO2 PAR tests. I discussed how the CO2 PAR map from the Smart 8 Plus is a little better than the original. Now we can see that it's delivering more light to the canopy, about 50 more micromoles of usable ppf. But again, that's because the Smart 8 Plus is pulling more power, not because it's more efficient. The photon efficacy actually ticked down. We'll see the same pattern with the ePAR test comparison. Smart 8 Plus delivers a slightly higher average density, which means it's delivering slightly more light, but the usable photon efficacy ticks down. We expected the Samsung LM301h to be more efficacious than the SanAn, but I always knew it was going to be close. Again, Samsungs are facing a slight disadvantage because of the test setup. They are processing more power, which lowers the total photon efficacy, and the fixture is hung higher, which lowers the usable photon efficacy. I'd be happy to invest an additional 26 watts of power to get the better coverage provided by the Smart 8 Plus. It'll be up to you whether you're also willing to pay an extra $135 to purchase it. Growers without supplemental carbon dioxide can also run the Smart 8 Plus in a 4x4 tent, but you'll have to dim it. With the original Smart 8, I found that you could run it at a high height at 80%, but you could also get great coverage at a lower height at only 60%. For the Smart 8 Plus, I dropped the dimmer to 80%, and I had to raise it up to 66 centimeters, 26 inches. to get the ppfd down to the 1000 micromole per square meter limit. I ran a full PAR test and then a full ePAR test. This may be one of the most common ways to set up and run the Smart 8. Let's check out the maps. This is phenomenal coverage. The maximum ppfd is 1000, and the majority of the map, from top to bottom, is above 900 micromoles per square meter. The phenomenal distribution is a result of two factors. First, the Smart 8 Plus is almost the same size as the coverage area. And second, the hanging height is up there. 26 inches is plenty of room for the light to spread and even out. I ran the same test with the original Smart 8. And it's tough to say which map is better just by looking at them. In the corners on the left, the original Smart 8 did better than the new Smart 8 Plus. We'll be able to compare more precisely with the full data. The ePAR map in this setup is predictably about 40 points higher across the board. In this map, you can see clearly how the densities are a little off center. They're shifted to the right because the power cord is hitting the left wall. I'll run the numbers on the Smart 8 Plus in these tests, and then we'll compare to the original. For these tests, I set the dimmer to 80% and then raised the height until the maximum PAR ppfd was 1000 micromoles per square meter. The hanging height was 66 centimeters, or 26 inches. The average ppfd is impressive, 922.2 micromoles per square meter, which converts to a usable ppf of 1328 micromoles. In the ePAR range, the maximum density was 1038, and the average density was 962.7 micromoles per square meter. That's good for a usable ePPF of 1386.3 micromoles. At 80% on the dimmer knob, the Smart 8 Plus pulled 618 watts from the wall, so the PAR photon efficacy is 2.15, and the ePAR photon efficacy is 2.24 micromoles per watt. These are great results. You may be wondering why the maps didn't seem much better than the same maps with the original Smart 8. Here with the original PAR test on the left and the Smart 8 Plus PAR test on the right, you can see the reason. Whereas with the 100% tests, the Smart 8 Plus drew about 26 watts more power, with the dimmer knob at 80%, the Smart 8 Plus actually draws 17 fewer watts. Despite pulling less power, the Smart 8 Plus actually puts out slightly more light. Therefore, it has a better photon efficacy in this test than the original Smart 8. We'll see the same pattern in the ePAR tests. The original Smart 8 delivered 1,375 micromoles with 635 watts. The new Smart 8 Plus delivered 11 more micromoles with 17 fewer watts. But this is ridiculously close in terms of actual performance. It's time for one last test. I clicked the dimmer knob down to 60% and dropped the Smart 8 Plus down to 30.5 centimeters, about 12 inches. I only ran the ePAR test with this setup. ePAR is the better guide to photosynthetic potential, and at this point, we have seen the relationship between PAR and ePAR in a number of tests. At this height, the maximum ppfd is no longer right in the middle. There are two hotspots, one on either side of the central chassis. With the original Smart 8, this setup produced a great result. Smart 8 Plus is also crushing it. Let's check out this map. The density in this map is perfect for growers without supplemental carbon dioxide. The maximum ePPFD is 1037 micromoles per square meter, and the maximum PAR ppfd would be right at 1000. The corners do drop off more than they did in the 80% test. Let's look at that again. In this test, we had more power and a higher hanging height, so we had more light overall, despite the maximum being the same. If you have enough height and you want to maximize production, then run it at 80%. But this 60% map at 12 inches is really good. The lowest densities are well above the 500 micromole per square meter threshold, close to 600, and the vast majority of the canopy is in the maximum production zone from 700 to 1000 micromoles per square meter. This 60% map with the Smart 8 Plus is better than the 60% map with the original Smart 8. You can see that with the original Smart 8, there was no territory above 1000 micromoles per square meter in the ePAR range, and the low values are lower in this map. So this will be interesting to compare. Let's run the numbers. The data from the original Smart 8 is on the left. The new Smart 8 Plus on the right was also hung at 30.5 centimeters, or 12 inches. All fixtures were dimmed to 60% on the dimmer knob. The Smart 8 Plus hit a higher maximum density with 1,037 micromoles per square meter and a higher average density with 834 micromoles per square meter. Therefore, it had a higher usable ePPF of 1,200.9 micromoles. But unlike all of the other tests, in the 60% test, the Smart 8 Plus had almost the same power draw as the original Smart 8. The Smart 8 Plus drew 455 watts, only 3 watts less than the original Smart 8. So these 60% tests provide a better head-to-head comparison in terms of photon efficacy. The original Smart 8 with the Sanan diodes delivered 2.56 micromoles per watt, and the new Smart 8 Plus delivered 2.64 micromoles per watt. It's a little better, but they're both great lights. I have some more data and thoughts to share. You can find everything on the test report page in the Coco for Cannabis Grow Light Guide. Here are the main data from the official ePAR test in the 5x5 area. These are great data. We rate it for almost 28 square feet and predict that you can harvest up to 48.4 ounces. That's over 3 pounds. Here you can find our discount code and shopping link. Shop Metacro.com and get an extra 10% off with code CCFC. The new Smart 8 Plus will come to about $701. That's only 39 cents per micromole. It's a great price for a fixture with Samsung LM301h diodes, but it's more than other Metagrow fixtures. Of course, one lucky viewer doesn't have to worry about the price. The Samsung LM301h diodes are the selling point for the Smart 8 Plus, so the winning number in the premier giveaway is 301. Congratulations to whoever guessed the closest number. And if you missed the premiere, hit that subscribe button and get notified about the next one. Below the test data and the growth space calculator, you'll find my written review.
I have always been impressed with the value of Metagrow fixtures. They are great performing lights that are usually incredible deals. 3 Metagrow lights that I've tested set all-time records for cost efficiency. I'm somewhat torn because this new Smart 8 Plus goes in a different direction. The Samsung LM301h are great diodes and growers are clamoring for them. Manufacturers like Metagrow want to give growers what they're asking for, but there's a cost. The LM301h diodes come at a premium price. Manufacturers either have to skimp on quantity or pass along those costs. I commend Metagrow for not lowering the diode count, but they did have to raise the price. I understand growers who want to get the best quality product at any cost, but I also understand growers who want to get the best deal. I suppose Metagrow now has an option for both.
I tested the dimmer on the Smart 8 Plus in the 5x5 area and found it to be accurate throughout the dimming range. As you can see in the test data, there's a steady relationship between power, PPFD, and ePPFD percentages. As with most fixtures, the density of light is a few percentage points higher than the power. I also measured the operating surface temperatures. The room is climate controlled at 25.5 degrees Celsius, 78 Fahrenheit. The fixture had been running for over 2 hours continuously when I measured the temperatures. The casing on the central driver only had a temperature of 41.8 degrees Celsius, 107.2 Fahrenheit. The LED bars had a high temperature of 49.3 degrees Celsius, 120.7 Fahrenheit. At full power, the Metagrow Smart 8 Plus will add about 2,650 BTU per hour to grow space. Only about 7% of that, 185 BTU per hour, is from the drivers in the central chassis.
Some growers will certainly decide that the improved performance is worth the added cost for the Smart 8 Plus, but the original Smart 8 remains an excellent light and the lower price point makes it very attractive. Whether you opt for the original or the Plus, the Metagrow Smart 8 is an excellent light. At Coco for Cannabis, we always put the grower's interest first. Our goal is to provide impartial, science-based testing and reviews for growers. You support our work when you use our discount codes to purchase grow lights. If you have questions or want to chat with me, I do the Ask Dr. Coco show every Monday night for my Patreon subscribers. Visit me on Patreon, Dr. MJ Coco.
I'd like to thank Rita at Metagrow for sending me the Smart 8 Plus to test. And thank you for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next PAR Test Premier giveaway.
And if you want to win a light, we're always doing Grow Light giveaways on the Deals and Discounts page at cocoforcannabis.com. Check it out. And while you're there, you can read our articles, chat with the community in the chat room, join our next Grow Challenge, or try your hand at the Grow Light calculator. Grow your own, but don't grow alone. Let's grow together. I'm Dr. MJ Coco, sending all of you grower love.